Wonderworld, a peaceful, little, tranquil park in the countryside, but not for much longer.
Hello, and welcome to Wonderworld Episode 4.
Sorry, I don't know what that was. Anyway, welcome to Wonderworld Episode 4, where the park is firmly entering the thrill market with its newest coaster in, the CORVUS. That's right, last week's coaster was the first coaster the park would have installed, and this week's is the most recent coaster. Talk about a bad order to do things in. If you're wondering why my voice sounds like my throat is made of sandpaper, it's because that's how it feels. It's winter and my body does not like it. As you've seen from the incredibly sexy and wallpaperable, if that's a word, thumbnail, then you'll already know that this week we're building a Mack Big Dipper. This one specifically being inspired by the under construction and rumoured to be called Voltron at Europa Park. In this episode, I'm going to create the coaster, smooth it to within an inch of its life, and then add one of those cool lighting packages that follows the train around the track. And then next episode, I'm going to theme it. This will be the first coaster that I've given a proper narrative and storyline, so I'm really excited and I can't wait to show you all how it works. But for now, sit back and grab some popcorn, because it's time-lapse time. This coaster, once it's themed, will tie directly into the lore and story of the park, that all revolves around the abandoned castle that I first mentioned in episode 1. I'll talk more about the theme and the story of the coaster when I make it in episode 5, but for now, I don't want to give too much away. This whole theme and story has been something I've been working on for quite a while and will tie the whole park together, so I'm really excited to see how it pans out over the next few episodes. My vision is to have all the major coasters in the park, a lot like many other parks in the world, all linked together and follow the same story and narrative. This will, again, give the park more cohesion, and allow guests to unravel different parts of the story as they explore their way around the park. This has been something that's fascinated me for a while, especially with all the coasters here in the UK like the ones at Alton Towers, each of them having their own unique backstory and theme behind them. Just think of Nemesis, 13 and Wickerman, they all have very distinct themes behind them that define the whole area that they're in. And in the case of Nemesis, this has even led to spin-off attractions like Nemesis Subterra, which, like I mentioned, is something you'll see in later episodes, where different attractions all build up the same storyline. Now, is this an inversion? Isn't it an inversion? Is it an Immelman? Or is it a junior Immelman? I'll leave you to decide, because I really don't care. If you're wondering which coaster type I used to create this ride, it's the Copperhead Strike model, which is a Mack launched coaster. I chose this one instead of the normal Mack launch coaster in the game, called the Vector, because it gives you the option to add a spine on the track. This spine just helps to strengthen the track in certain areas, typically in areas where the train experiences sharper turns, just to strengthen the track, and increase the longevity of the coaster's life. Because as you can see from some of these elements, especially the one I'm just about to build here, this coaster is going to be quite intense. This ride is going to creatively use block sections to cut the ride in half using show scenes. These will be just as you come out of the station, before the first main launch, and before the second main launch. Together with the queue, these will provide context and narrative to the ride. Someone asked me a while ago in the comments whether I plan out my coasters before I make them. Well, this is how I do it. I make a rough sketch like this of the coaster design, but when I actually build it, certain parts can deviate. It's just a rough plan, so I know what I'm doing with the ride area and the layout. As you can see just here, we're finishing the first half of the ride with some brakes and then a block section to turn it around into the second launch. In the next episode, when I eventually come to theme this will be all inside a show building, and will be where the second themed show is located. As the ride turns round into its second launch section here, I really struggled with what this part was going to look like. I had the vision of coming through Main Street down the path that you can just see there to see the main loop at the end of the pathway. But then with where the second launch ended up being located, I wanted this to interact nicely with the loop and the entrance pathway as well. So after reprofiling the loop here to make it a little bit larger so you get more hang time at the top, I decided to make the element after the second launch interact with this. I did this by making it rise up so that it's not too forceful and go into almost like a barrel roll section, where the train completes one full inversion and then almost like a half inversion, which is basically an overbank to dive through the loop. After the train would come back down to the ground here, I needed a really large element to utilise some of that speed. So I ended up going for a corkscrew. Now most of the time corkscrews are really small and whippy, but with this one I wanted to make it quite a large element so you get some nice hang time at the top. Then after this I did my usual mandatory smoothing and reprofiling pass. Here I got to the point in the ride where I need to try and reduce as much speed as possible before it gets back to the station. So I decided that I'd add a really tall dive loop. A common mistake I see people doing when they make dive loops in Immelmann's is that it doesn't invert at the proper time. On a dive loop, you want it to invert at the peak of the inversion, or at least a little bit before, just so that it's not inverting as it's going down, causing uneven forces on the train and the riders. After this, I added a little bit of a twisty section just to get it back to the brake run, and then we're finished. Now, because the in-game coaster supports are terrible, and because I hate myself, I decided to custom support the entire coaster. This is only something I've done a few times on coasters on console, so I haven't really put as much detail in as I could on PC, but I severely underestimated how long this task would take. For some inspiration, I looked at some photos I'd taken of Icon, which is a Mack multi-launch coaster at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, where the supports were made of a piece in the track, connected to the spine, then connected to the main arm of the support. And you cannot have a go at me in the comments when this is the kind of precedent I have to go off. Exactly, because real life supports do look shit, and that's fine. The first piece of support structure I made was this enclosure around the first loop. Given that this is the first element you come to after the first launch, it's going to be one of the most forceful parts of the ride, so it needs a lot more structure than most of the track normally would. So I created almost this arm structure that goes around the first half, and then I copied it and modified it to the second half. After this, I added the coaster support footers and then flanges? Is that a real word? You know, the little connectory bits between the support beam column. I have really no idea what I'm talking about. After supporting the loop, I worked my way around and did the rest of the track. As you can see here, the dip after the inversion would be quite an intense part as the train plummets back towards the floor. But whereas with this part here, the airtime hill, the train's force would be pulling upwards on the track instead of downwards, meaning that there would be less force on the train and the track. At this point, I think I was already half an hour in. Supporting the entire coaster, I think took me around 4 hours, so if you're going to attempt this, just be wary that it will eat up your entire day, and probably your whole life. Now I've sped up this section a little bit more than I normally would, just in an attempt to not bore you to death. With the raw footage sped up to 4 times the speed, which is the speed I normally go at. This footage is still around 15 minutes long, so this is at 10 times the speed of what it normally would be. And I've still cut out some parts, just in an attempt to make you not claw your own eyes out. Like I mentioned before, next week's episode, episode 5, will be where we theme this coaster. And if you're that desperate to see this coaster get themed, which I know I am, you could become a channel member, which at level 2 gets you 5 days early access to videos. On to the last part of the time lapse now, where even after I'd finished all the custom supporting, I wasn't happy with something. The ending section of the ride, where it just kind of sort of an S-bend into the brake run, felt a bit too fast and a little bit too boring. So I went back afterwards and made this helix that you can see here, just to kill a little bit of the speed before it gets back into the station. Because I definitely enjoy putting even more effort in than I really need to, I had to custom support this entire section again. Oh, one more thing. I wanted to add some lights to the coaster to follow the train as it goes around, creating like this cool pulsing effect where the lights would actually follow the train as it goes around the layout. But just like the custom supporting, I severely underestimated how long this would take. Again, taking probably hours of my life away that I'm never going to get back, but it looks good at least. Then after this I included an even more exciting time-lapse of me painstakingly going through and mapping each one of these lights to a trigger, where it gets activated just before the train reaches that section of track. And just like that, we're finished. Thank you so much again for watching. This series is going really well and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go. If you're like me and you're really enjoying where this series is going, then please consider subscribing. I've just recently hit 4,000 subscribers and I'm already on the road to 5k. I've got some really amazing things planned in the pipeline, especially for when we hit 5k, so please stick around for that as you're not going to want to miss all of them. Yes, there's more than one thing and I'm so excited to reveal to you what it is. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.